Oh, here we go. I just got a pop-up that said our meeting is now streaming live.
We took 10 minutes here. Okay. Start this. Okay, let me close that window before we get an echo.
Oh, here we go. I just got a pop-up that said.
There we go. Okay, I think we're ready. Whew.
Okay, I'm going to call the meeting of the Salem Public Art Commission to order. Today is Wednesday, May 12th, and it is 9:39 a.m. First on the agenda is introductions. I am Chris Darcy, Chair of the Commission.
I'm Paula Booth, Commissioner.
Rachel Bucci, Commissioner.
Michael Hernandez, Commissioner.
Kelly James, Commissioner.
And Heather Dimke with Public Works.
Heather, did we receive any public comment?
There is no formal public comment. I will share, we got an interest from Marion County Juvenile Department that they're interested in a mural program of sorts with youth. And so I don't know if we want to chat about that now. I'd like to share the information that was provided at some point. So maybe towards the end of the meeting.
Okay, that sounds good. Let's consider the consent agenda. I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda, the agenda for today, and the minutes of our April meeting.
I move that we accept the consent agenda and the minutes from our April meeting.
Is there a second?
I second it.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. And it doesn't sound like anyone is opposed.
Aye.
Let's go into our discussion items. First up is the library.
Okay, well, I have a few updates to share. So the selection committee for the new artwork, the Amanda Wojcik piece, we all met, and again, that includes folks from the Library Foundation, the advisory board, as well as Chris Darcy and Rachel Bucci here from the Art Commission. This group collectively met Thursday, April 14th after our last SPAC meeting and got a pretty quick update from Amanda. We got some new visuals. We got to hear a bit more about the process and when she's looking to install. I think the meeting seemed to go well. It was neat to get a visual of what the piece is looking like, a lot more color. And it was really fun, I thought. And it seemed unanimous across the group that folks seem to be excited. And you'll have more to share likely, but from my notes, it sounds like she's planning, and I haven't heard otherwise since, to start the installation the week of June 10th, which happens to be the same week we shall meet again in June. She's having the installation done by, I think it was Fine Artworks Services. So she's calling on assistants to have formal installation done of the piece. And I think she said it's in 8 separate sections. What did I miss from that discussion? There's no final name yet. There was much discussion, but it was exciting to see the piece.
I think that's a good recap. The library people seemed pleased that she had added more color to the piece. Sarah, the librarian, was I thought pretty enthusiastic, yeah. And yeah, I thought it went well. And I guess in terms of a follow-up, I think it would be nice if we could get CC Media to do some documentation of either Amanda's process or do an interview with her, before she does the install, and then maybe they could actually cover the install as well. The other thing, I guess, that is unresolved at this point is whether there is still potential to do some kind of a temporary exhibition of her creative process that would be up at the library, as maybe one of the inaugural shows in that temporary exhibition space. But Rachel, what was your takeaway from that meeting?
With regard to the exhibition?
Anything. her,
Oh, okay. I thought it was a good meeting. I thought it was, the piece looks like it's moving along and we're down to the last stretch here for completion, and seemed like she had been very responsive to the suggested modifications and solving those issues. So I thought it was a good meeting, and people seem really enthusiastic about the piece. And yeah, so I think it was productive, a
Yeah.
good update.
I agree. I agree. And it sounds like, she is represented by Elizabeth Leach Gallery, which has a pretty robust social media presence. So as we think about PR surrounding this, we might look to them to collaborate.
Yeah. So what are the next steps for moving along this exhibition idea? I think that Eileen, was it in our last meeting that she said that Kate with the foundation had indicated that she was excited about that idea, and that was fine because they're not going to have something for that space. That was my understanding.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think Eileen shared that. I was on a couple of emails that went through, and I know we brought it up again with Sarah, the librarian, during this selection committee meeting. I'm not sure she remembered the emails, but I chatted with her a bit afterwards, and she had no concerns. So I think maybe what I could do is send yet another email if we'd like to move forward, and just let those folks know that we're still interested. And then if you want me to reach out to Amanda, or if we reach out to the gallery next, I've not heard any more on opening date. I don't know if we have an exact date yet, but I can just start working with the library and engineering on trying to narrow in what that might look like, and start reaching out to folks if you want me to do that.
Yeah, I think the first person to reach out to is Amanda to see what she has. Does she have drawings? Are there digital things? Are there material samples? And then probably somebody would need to interview her to get, a description of her process. Maybe there could also be kind of a panel that talks about the process by which Amanda was selected, and the fact that there were, a certain number of finalists, and we had in-person presentations, and, so it really is an educational piece that would appeal to a variety of folks.
Yeah, I think at our meeting with Amanda, it came up, and she said she sounded enthusiastic about the idea and wanted to do it. I remember that she did say that she's going to be away during a period of the summer. So I think we also need to figure out a timeline connected to this project. And it sounds like her gallery has work that could be included as part of the show, either older work or some new pieces. And I'm sure that is it Daniel who works at the gallery?
Daniel Peabody.
So I'm sure that he would be able to be a liaison of some kind with somebody here on our committee.
I wonder, is there a cost associated with this idea of doing this installation / programming?
Yes.
Yes, and I think we should speak.
Whatever. I mean, I know I haven't been part of all the conversations, but it just makes me, the gallery gets involved, the transportation of artwork, or how we display this,
Right. I think there will be, the sooner that we can sort of work out what will be shown will be help develop a budget. And then if we can include this installation as part of maybe the full library installation, that would be a good thing to do. And then there's probably some production costs. Well, there will be for labels and a text panel, and maybe vinyl lettering or something like that in the space. So I think the sooner we talk with Amanda to get us, and then, so we need to put together a timeline and also a budget.
And I would think we could speak with Kate about some financial support for this whole endeavor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it makes me, the other thing to maybe to add to the list would be the library carries insurance for Amanda's work to be beyond the work that's part of the collection. Because I know that for instance, the Salem Reads little show that goes in there, the disclaimer is there's no liability from the library because they don't have insurance on the work that's being installed. So knowing her work's higher in value, be another question to ask if it's an issue. And then I'm setting her work aside from her process stuff because maybe that there's two parts to this.
Right.
And then I also thought we could be an attempt to video her in her studio, and instead of having her have to come to Salem or anything like that, or in the gallery. I don't know if the gallery is going to see value of that, but just to make it easy on her to get some even 2-minute long video that just be playing on a monitor. Could be a nice caveat. If we can't do the full installation, we could at least go for a video piece. It'd be pretty easy to do, I would think.
Yeah. And U of O might have some capacity for that. I mean, she is a faculty member, and there's a University of Oregon communications hook to this as well.
Yeah, I thought of that myself when I just got the most recent U of O magazine, the quarterly. Yeah. And we should definitely reach out to them because they're always looking for articles. And I think recently they've started writing a lot of those articles in-house through their communications department. So I think it would be pretty easy to get something going there.
I agree. I mean, I get the art department e-news as well, but I do think it's an overall U of O thing. I forget the name of the guy who's the editor of the magazine, but I know him. I just can't remember his name.
I want to say it's Ben or Brian or something like that.
You can look it up.
So, and then, I mean, as far as the insurance piece, Michael, that's a good point. And it's probably something that Kate, if they're going to be managing that as a rotating gallery space of a certain caliber, they may need to be thinking about that and for future exhibitions.
Yeah, besides just community, I wouldn't say smaller, but community type shows where often artists might be more willing to just sign off the liability. But yeah, bigger names, it's going to be more expensive artwork.
Right. Well, lots to focus on. Who would like to participate in kind of hammering out the details as a subcommittee?
I'm willing to help with that. I am also going to be gone for a little bit of time at the end of July. So hopefully, I mean, obviously all this stuff should be figured out by then, but I don't think we have a clear sense yet of when an installation might happen, but if we are using, say, Silas or, you know, whoever is going to end up installing all of the other artworks, that should all be in place at that point.
Okay, so maybe the first step is to speak with Amanda and find out what her schedule is, and then we can start plugging in the various pieces from
Mhm.
there. I do have a pretty good
I'd be willing
relationship.
to help too. Sorry.
Perfect.
Oh, Paula, yeah, you would be definitely someone who's done this before.
All right. Anything else on that topic before we move on to the other 80 plus works that will return to the library?
Has there been shared the new visual from Amanda? Heather, have I missed that?
I didn't get a copy of it.
Oh, okay.
I think she was trying to keep it somewhat under wraps.
Was it like, did she do those renderings, like multiple renderings, different in remember how she presented before, like within the space and stuff?
Yes.
Or was it just a flat?
Yes, and I think we should get those and circulate those to SPAC.
So I can, if folks are okay with me reaching out to her to ask about this, I can ask for copies of her latest and share.
Great. And
Awesome.
I know she doesn't want them recirculated, so let's just
Yeah.
make sure that this is just for SPAC information, not for public view right now. Okay, that would be great, Heather. What about the rest of the collection?
Okay, looking at my notes here, I did get an email from Eileen, who has been very hard at work. Let's see. There are 88 artwork labels ready to prove from 49 different artists. That includes possible artworks from other locations that might be considered as well. And then there's apparently a few 8 labels that there's still some work to do, but very little information. So anyway, most of the labels are done, 88, and it sounds like she intends to send those out to Rachel and Paula if you have time to do the final review of those Thursday or Friday. And I've been in touch with Felt Hat. I don't know how many labels they were anticipating from us, so I did let him know this week that staff were working on around 80. I've not yet heard back. I don't anticipate there'll be any concerns, but I just wanted to let them be aware that we had that amount. And then I also, just for the record, I did reach out to, at the last meeting, there was interest expressed in maybe some of those pieces from the mayor's office. Let's see, the Carl Hall, is it?
Yes.
The mayor would like to keep those pieces, is what I was informed. Apparently he knew Mr. Hall, so he does feel some attachment to the artwork that's in there now. So that's not an option right now.
And I think we should honor the mayor's request. Yeah, I think I have no problem with that.
And then just so everybody's aware, I did get the final engineered drawings and calculations. It's quite a set from KPFF Engineering, and this is for the designed reinstallation of birds. That's going to address both the seismic safety upgrades in the building and updated building code. Aaron from engineering has that as well, and he agreed to share those with Howard Wright, who's doing the other construction, just to see if they might be willing to do the actual install. And of course, if they are, it's been noted that, Paul, I think you offered to help to be on site, or maybe others as well. But I haven't heard a final answer on that. I'm not sure who else could do it, but I'll take that step, I guess, if Howard's unavailable for that. And then I've not heard, I did ask for additional locations from Hacker for the Setziel screen. They were working on it, but I didn't get any new information on that. I did reach out to the director of the law library this week, Ann Kitchell, and let her know that construction was wrapping up and we were interested in likely collecting that screen once again here June or early July. I spoke with our facilities crew who helped us dismantle and reassemble that piece over a year ago, and they're willing to again do that. I would like to find another, if possible. We had a general moving company move that piece. Getting it into the library there was not easy. There's a staircase, the only entrance that we could get in, quite a staircase. And it sounds like it's probably going to be even harder to get that out. We could have used additional bodies. We could have used some actual equipment for the move, and I had not been on site prior to that. Anyway, needless to say, I'd be looking, if you guys have options of other folks who might have the capacity to move this huge piece and be delicate with it as well, let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to start searching now for options for that.
Heather, did we, I have a memory of a discussion about cleaning and that piece. Is that right? Did we talk about that at some point?
Yeah, we did kind of a light cleaning when we took that piece down. It was, I think, and I forget her name, Setziel.
Monica.
Thank you. She had joined us, and I think Eileen or Paula, you asked her about cleaning and the need to maybe oil it, and so it was agreed that yeah, that's something. And we discussed that briefly with Ann at the law library when we moved the piece in, and that was right at the time COVID hit. So we never got around to doing any cleaning of it since it's been over there. So it will need cleaned, or should be.
Didn't we talk about doing the final cleaning, and Monica recommended an oil that it's also needs some, it's got like gum stuck to it in places, but I think, didn't we talk about doing it once it was back in the library in its spot?
Yeah, I think that came up a couple different times. That's probably the easiest. There is new carpeting and whatnot in there, but I'm sure we can protect all that off, let folks know what we're up to. But yeah, that probably should be done before the opening, if possible.
I don't know if there would be time. Ideally, once it's in the space, you know, we could put plastic under it or whatever to clean it while it's still on the floor. And then,
Oh, sure.
I don't know if there'll be enough time to do that. It might need to just be fully installed and then clean it, but it didn't really make sense to do that work before it was moved. Also, just in terms of moving, I think that we've mentioned this before, but a piano mover might be an option.
Okay, yeah, I remember that.
Just because they're used to being extremely careful.
And heavy objects.
And heavy objects, yeah.
I'm willing to help in any way in the moving if, you know, if there's just need other people or just someone to watch, I'm willing to help with that.
Thank you, Kelly.
Does it make sense to bring in somebody to do an estimate for the cleaning while it's still in place at the library?
Like a Tom Fuller?
Mm-hmm.
I can out and see what that might cost. Tom Fuller.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Where's he with? Is there
He's a conservator. He does work for the Hallie Ford Museum and he does work for the Benton County Historical Society. He lives in Corvallis, but he's very good.
Did Monica have a suggestion as to what oil needs to go on it or what they've used in the past?
I'm sure we could find out from her.
She did, and I wrote it down somewhere, but it's been a year. I can see if I can find it, but we could just get in touch with her. She did, and it wasn't complicated.
No, it shouldn't be.
I think she was, at one point, we had asked her to do some replacement pegs too that were missing on the piece. But I don't know that we've had any communication with her this last year.
Well, we should make sure that she is, if there's any kind of a VIP art thing associated with the library, we should make sure that she is invited.
Should I reach out to her directly? I think, Paula, you and Eileen were in contact with her before. I'm happy to do that if you provide the contact info.
I will find it. I know that I have her email. In fact, I'll check in just a minute.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I can start that as well. I think that was those are the only other for the library updates that I had right now. I've not heard any more on which pieces might come back just yet. And I know we were trying to wait as things get wrapped up. So I'm not sure. Next month is June already. I think next month, what I'd heard is in June that furnishings and books and things are going to start moving in at some point. So let me know what we need to do if folks are ready to get in there soon and kind of look at the space, or if we should set a meeting, or if we want to wait until late June to finalize what pieces. Let me know what next steps in that process.
Probably should happen pretty soon. I drove by the other day and I could see that the shelves are in the main space already. So they are moving along. They look like they were empty, but they were definitely there.
At any point, I'm sure we could get folks in there to take a look. If we want to wait longer, I understand. I'm just throwing that offer out there.
Okay. Probably I guess the next thing would be the Betty Leduc donation, the gift of Trees of Life. And it sounds like Betty signed her a donation agreement.
Yes, she did. So we met with the attorney, which didn't wrap everything up. The suggestion was you just reach out to Betty, which is what I did. I sent her an email, I gave her a call, and I was able to connect with her pretty quickly. And so I chatted with her a little bit about, some of that original language that was in the agreement, to get a sense from her what her concerns might be with that. Really, it was the copyright information that we had in there. I'd let her know about the other pieces, the Visual Artists' Rights Act. She didn't seem concerned about that. So I shared that with our attorney. He ended up inserting some of the language from the Hallie Ford example on the copyright language. And so we sent that down, and she signed it. I chatted with her again a couple times since. She did say the language is a bit peculiar. Peculiar was her word for it, but she was fine. She was excited that we were happy to have the piece and really excited to get it into the library. Yeah, and she in fact sent me, she does have some other artworks that she's interested in donating, which we can get to in a little while. But yeah, so we have a signed agreement. I've mailed a copy of that back to her. I've reached out to John Black to ask about transport. He was planning to be in Ashland on July 13th. And so I've confirmed with Betty, apparently he's worked with Miss Leduc before. So that's good. And I've confirmed with her that July 13th, which feels a little late, but that's what he had on the books. And so I've gone for it at this point. He's got that date reserved. The price for wrapping and delivering that piece to us was $750. Which seemed reasonable. That was cheaper than the Melcats up to Portland and back that we did a couple years ago for repainting. It seemed like that was over $1,000. So I went ahead, and we have that reserved right now. So let me know if there's any concerns there.
That sounds great. That sounds good to me. And I thank you for doing all the legwork to get that agreement signed. Again, thinking about on the communication front, I think that this is another opportunity. Betty's a very, prominent artist of a certain type in Oregon. And, this is significant work being gifted to the city for the library. And it's just an opportunity to talk about, why this work is important. So we can figure that out. Betty's not represented by a gallery. So, you know, I'm sure we can put together a release and even, I mean, think about getting some video of Betty. There might be stuff that's existing. I can poke around a little.
Yeah, she did say, apparently she has some pieces now, and you might have mentioned that before, in the governor's office, or?
She had an exhibition in the governor's office. In fact, I have the show card right here. It was right before COVID. It was February, the original dates were February 3rd, April 2nd, 2020. Did she suggest that those works were still in the governor's office?
She did.
Oh,
And in fact, expressed an interest, and she didn't give any dates, but she wanted to come to Salem to stop and visit both locations.
yeah, great. Here's the card.
Maybe it sounded like she had donated maybe some other works, or so maybe I guess I could clarify with her.
I can call over to the Arts Commission. It's funny because I never saw the show, and I kept this card, and now I'll have to figure out how to get in the office. But that's actually good to know, because we could all go over and see the work. I'll find out. I think the Capitol's closed, but people are getting in. Well, great. Should we talk about the pieces that she is considering or she's offering as a donation while we're still on the topic of Betty Leduc?
Yeah.
Especially if they might go into the library.
Sure, I can bring up photos. She sent me a beautiful catalog. It's just gorgeous, and then she little notes on which pieces she's thinking. There's 3 different paintings, but I did find images online, so I can share with the group now if you want to see those. If I can do that.
Let's do that now while we're on the topic of Betty. I mean, I worry about the city not having adequate space for the work it has, but let's see what these look like.
Let me scroll through. Are you seeing my screen?
Yes, but these are not Betty Leduc's work.
These are not Betty Leduc. These are the other potential donation, which we still have on the agenda.
Right.
So here, this is the first one, Oregon, Jason's Journey. Everybody can see. They're fairly large. Each of them is fairly large. That's one of 3. So then there's Oregon, Ocean Waves. And Oregon, Summer Joy.
Do we know which paintings are going to be moved from the convention center to the library? I think there were a few that were requested.
I don't remember any new ones being requested to move.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any pieces from the convention center being moved to the library, because most of the work at the convention center was acquired for the convention center, and they have to stay within that urban renewal district. There is conversation between the Oregon Artist Series Foundation and the Hallie Ford Museum about possibly swapping out some of the paintings that are on loan from the Hallie Ford, but that is a conversation, and it's we're still in discussion with the museum. In fact, I might be going over to the convention center this week.
I know Eileen has worked up these labels, and I'm assuming, I thought she was working with Kate and Eric on works that were going to be put back in the library. Is that?
She's working with.
How far along is that, I guess? I'm not clear on that.
I think she's been working with a couple volunteers from the foundation. I don't know if it was Kate. I think it was, and I can't remember her name, one of the gals that's on the selection committee.
Gretchen?
Gretchen Poppage.
And then another individual from the foundation. I think she has some ideas, but I haven't heard any more on what pieces. I think her work has mostly been focused on updating those labels.
Okay,
I don't know if there's been any real determinations on.
okay. The reason I ask is I'm just looking at the size of these paintings and wondering if perhaps, I mean, they also would look really nice there with the light and at the convention center, I mean, but if they're not moving anything out, then, I mean, they would look nice at the library as well. They're not very characteristic of her recent work. They're older pieces, so,
Yeah.
But they're nice paintings.
Yeah, I mean, they're large.
Yeah, I mean, they're like 5 and 6 feet
Mhm.
across.
I can show more of those again, or we can move that to the end. Think about it, folks can think.
Why don't we, well, thank you for sharing them. Let's get through the rest of the agenda and then we can come back to those. You know, they're pieces that are 50 years old and they're large. So figuring out really, I mean, where they could go. I will say the convention center is actually getting pretty full because some of the walls can't really accommodate, you know, art. Well, first of all, there are a lot of windows. Then there are walls that are concrete. And then there is the existing collection there. So
Yeah, I don't think we should be adding work to the convention center. I was just under the impression that there were a few paintings that might be coming from the convention center to the library that are not part of that purchase agreement or whatever.
there's only one piece that falls into that category, and it's a Harry Woodman painting that was from like 1972.
Right. So
Yeah.
is that, I just wondered if Eileen was planning. I don't know. I mean, it's hard to make the decision without knowing how many pieces are going back into the library and if any of these would have a space. It's not, I don't think we should be acquiring things and putting them in storage. We have no storage.
Right.
We don't even have a storage facility. So,
Yeah. I guess let's go back. Let's finish the agenda and then we'll come back to this, the donation question and the Betty Leduc and the other one. Should we move into public art and parks?
Sounds good.
I asked that this be put on the agenda because I know that there is park planning going on. I went to a plant sale out at the Pringle community and the greenhouse person was telling me about development on that tract in that general area. And she said that the city had acquired some land for a future park, and that plus whatever might happen out on the old state hospital property made me think that we should have a conversation with the folks who are both in the city's parks group and maybe the Salem Parks Foundation about, you know, what could happen. So, you know, I would love to see us either have a joint meeting, attend one of their meetings, just talk about, you know, what's happening in some other jurisdictions. Portland's done some interesting work. Hillsborough's done some interesting work. And just, you know, think about what might be possible either on a temporary basis or on a permanent basis. there are lots of good examples for both. And I just wanted to put it on the agenda this morning. I've been collecting examples from other places, which I think are, some involve a lot of community involvement in terms of building things that might be temporary and made out of natural materials. Some are much more elaborate, but there are a lot of different ways to approach things depending on where you are and where the park is and what kind of who lives around it, or is it designed for dog walkers? Is it a place of quiet contemplation? Is it for kids? Or all the above? Anyway, any other thoughts on that?
I think that's
I
a good.
reached out. Oh, go ahead, please.
I think that's a good idea. And, just an aside, I know, I think the city of Redmond actually has, they have a kind of a circulating artwork sculpture thing that they do. And even if there's a design for maybe a pedestal or something where art could rotate through, ideas like that, if I know sculptors that are looking for opportunities to display their work, and that kind of thing, that they get 6 months to install, or their piece can be there for a year, and people can apply. I think there's ideas like that that can make art at least getting into public spaces.
Yeah, I think there are many examples. There are some very fun ones that are less about the sculpture on the pedestal and more about literally creating an environment that you can walk through or experience at different times of the day, or something that might cast a dramatic shadow in addition to being a work of art. But I looked at the Salem Parks Foundation board list. There's at least one name I was familiar with, but it would be good to just look at who meets when and just begin a conversation. There's also a big space over by Pringle Hall, which I know it's in a floodplain because Patricia from Parks told us that, but there are some places around the city that could accommodate as Kelly suggested, a seasonal sculpture, and some in a safe way, so it wouldn't be there in the dead of winter when everything might be super soggy.
There was conversation right before COVID. The SAA was trying to put a more formal plan against Bush Park for sculpture. Do you recall any of that?
No, but
Or has anyone heard if it's gone anywhere? Because I think they were looking. It was definitely in the beginnings of a planning phase before SA shut down.
Well, there was a cultural landscape project happening with Greater Bush Park, and that is an elaborate plan that looks at kind of the history of a garden park environment, and then assesses what all the assets are. And then the final phase, and these are quite complicated things, is putting together a plan moving forward. And I was reminded by the people at Lord and Scriver last week that this process has gone on in Bush Park. I don't have an update, and I think that Eileen was kind of representing SPAC in some of those discussions, but I have not heard anything. I'm not hearing much from Salem Art Association in general. My sense is that they're not terribly experienced with the siting of public sculpture in the best ways.
Yeah, I think I recall it was Sandra. Can't remember her last name.
Burnett
had shared something. And she had talked about, the sensitivity with the trees and stuff that are there. That I had no idea that there's some pretty deep, pardon the pun, deep-rooted history with protecting those trees. But anyway, it just makes me think with now, this will be the second summer with no art fair, and then that being a significant, under the idea of parks and sculpture art in the parks. It's just kind of sad. Here we go, a whole nother summer. Makes it seem like this temporary idea is a great idea in lieu of some of these events not happening again due to COVID. So,
yeah. Well, maybe we should talk, at least get a conversation set up with the parks folks about, ways to go. I found Patricia to be a very, a good advocate and good thinker. She's the only person I know in that arena. And I'll see what I can find out about that cultural landscape business, because I had forgotten about it until someone asked me a question about it.
Yeah, I think they've mostly wrapped that up. There is information on the website about it. And it looked like they were hoping to finalize that cultural landscape plan this spring of 2021. I've not followed it, but I did take a peek. Patricia would have a lot more detail on that. I did reach out to her.
Yeah.
And just to kind of get the conversation restarted with her, she shared with me that they have been adding potential art locations in several of their more recent community park master plans. She mentioned Gear in Battle Creek. I peeked at the Gear. You can see their draft master plan is basically a large drawing with all the potential amenities. And you can see, I think there was at least 3 different locations identified in that plan through their process for potential artworks. So in there, I think they're planning to continue to do that. She's been listening into some of the Our Salem, and so she did share that, the idea of art in parks has come up sometimes with mixed reviews. And I think some of the concerns that she shared is concerns over clutter or maybe bad art, that local artists might not be prioritized, and then the money that's spent on these things. So anything, and I think the reason for her sharing that is that she would, and it makes sense, push that we should definitely have a robust public involvement with any of these, any project that we would pursue, which obviously we would want to do that. She shared a bit more. There's interest in neighborhood and cultural identity, and maybe the use of temporary art, pop-up art, or murals. Apparently somebody has brought up the idea of putting a mural, in fact, on there's a new it's called the ASR building, a water treatment building that is going in at Woodmansey Park in South Salem. And so that had come up at one point. There's concerns about continued maintenance of anything that we do. Mm-hmm. And then she brought up the power pole idea that was brought up years ago at Mento with the tribes. So I don't know if at some point we'd want to reach back out to them, but I don't know. In conversation with her, it seemed like, we're kind of really slowly moving in that direction. I wonder if it makes sense for us to kind of just, pick something that we're really interested in and kind of start putting those on the table and start that, public comment, say it be one of these temporary art projects, find out what it would cost, where we would maybe want to place something like that, and then just kind of dive into that process and see, because it kind of hasn't been really explored too thoroughly just yet, is my impression. And there's not really a separate funding source for anything. So I have no idea what some of these temporary installations might cost. But right now, I think that's mostly would come from the art fund, unless there's like grants, which occasionally there's these grant programs that pop up. There was, there was a Bloomberg philanthropy asphalt art initiative with a temporary art project that came across our through email in March, and it was a grant. You had to turn around and wrap that up by April, so we didn't have a chance to pursue it. But I've seen other project ideas like that pop up in the last couple of years, and so that might be another option as well.
Okay. Good to get that background. I understand that that parks can have, there are many different types of parks. There are places that are wild and places where people go to for quiet contemplation. And there are active parks in neighborhoods that are, where there's kids and lots of noise and lots of activities. And there's kind of everything in between. So I think it would be I think it would be fun to look at what art in parks looks like. Here's the ecology, and then look at what we've got here in Salem. Like I'm probably not aware of every park that exists, and look at what might make sense where, and then what it might cost and who wants it to happen. If it's like 5 of us, that might not be enough. But I do think, I think we should at least pursue it a little further in conversation with parks, and then see if it's, rises up to the top of a priority list. We've got a lot of other stuff going on, although I think once the library project is finished,
Yeah.
we've got a few other things, but there's nothing giant on the horizon except for the Earth Ball.
Lest we forget.
Yeah. Should we move on to Wayne Taysom, the panels?
Yeah, and the only update I have on that is that we have additional time for those to remain in storage. Thankfully, they're not going to be, at least at this point, remodeling that first floor of Civic, the entire floor. So they're only doing a portion, and it's been confirmed that they can stay where they're at. So I know you had got on the books at Willamette Heritage.
Mm-hmm.
It looked like, Chris. So I think if we can get some more information, whatever we can get to help in our final determination of what needs to be done. We brought up before that SHPO has suggested that we would keep the doors, as part of the display. And that seems to me like it's going to be a challenge, just given the weight, primarily. So any information I think that we can collect before we make our decision and share that with SHPO can only help, I would think. But we have time.
Do we know who prepared the National Register
Oh my gosh,
nomination?
you guys have asked that. I've never,
That's okay.
I'm sorry. I will ask Kimberly.
I'm just wondering who, was it submitted by the city or another group? Sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
It wasn't the city.
No, it wasn't. Okay.
Oh, interesting. Well, you can submit a nominations can take a path in different directions in terms of the significance of a historic place. So it can be about the architecture. It can be about like important policy that happened in the building. It can be associated with significant historic figures. And
I mean, the reason I ask is that, as you know, Chris, as part of these nominations, there's an extensive narrative that accompanies it, and it's annotated and includes all of the relevant details. So if we can see that nomination, there may be information within it that gives us more. So in other words, these people have already done the research that we may be replicating for no reason. You know what I'm saying? It would be good to see it because they may already know some of the answers to the questions that we have about the doors, or at least point us in the right direction to get that info. So how do we get a copy of it?
I think if Kimberly Fitzgerald doesn't know, I'm sure I could call somebody at SHPO and ask the question. Somebody at SHPO is the National Register contact. And often someone will just prepare the nomination, or there are people who specialize in doing this work on contract. And you're absolutely right, Rachel. We should see that anyway if we're dealing with the doors in general.
I mean, the reason this is kind of in the ARG just prepared the nomination for Stonehenge, which
Oh,
is not on the National Register, surprisingly. But so they did all the research. And when
Right.
I read it, and I've been working with Mary Hill for almost 12 years, there was information in there that I had never seen before, that they tracked down through research that they did into historic publications and archives. I mean, they went through a lot of information to dredge up all the documentation for the nomination. So it would be really helpful to see the nomination.
Yeah, well, they would be they would be an example of the kind of consultants who do this for a living.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I am very curious because they're quite detailed. I mean, my neighborhood here in Salem was proposed as a historic district, and someone prepared a National Register nomination, and it is very, very robust in terms of information.
Yeah, it's 45 pages, the
Yeah,
one
right.
that for Stonehenge, and it has at least 3 pages of bibliography and notes. So
Yeah, it's
I
good.
would imagine it will be the same for the building.
Oh, yeah. Because if you look up, like mid-century architecture in Oregon, that Civic Center pops up and it's on various websites. All right, well, let's do this. Let's see if we can get the National Register nomination, and then Heather can check in with Kimberly on where things stand. And I submitted an online request to view the Sedicase Architects papers, which are archived at Willamette Heritage. I got an immediate acknowledgement that said, we'll be back in touch with you to schedule. I have heard nothing since then. So they are open for minimal, visitation at Willamette Heritage. And I'll just, as soon as I hear anything, I'll let you know. And maybe Rachel, you could come over there with me and look through the stuff. I also I detailed exactly what I was looking for, so that, because sometimes the archivist can actually go through the stuff and pull the material and then report back. So, but I haven't heard anything, sadly.
Well, thanks for bringing up the nomination again. I'm sorry I haven't asked, so I'll reach out to Kimberly shortly. I've got that highlighted in my notes.
Okay.
Thanks, Heather.
Let's go back to the next action item. So we've got, first of all, a request for an offer of a donation from a local artist named Doug Dawson. This was on our agenda at the last meeting. We did not have a quorum to take action. Mr. Dawson, I believe, is deceased. His wife has offered some paintings. It sounds like Doug Dawson was originally a police officer who then went to law school and was active in the local, he might have been connected to a DA's office, but he was a student of Eileen Cotter Howell. I was not familiar with him or his work before this request, but let's just take a look at the images. Sounded like another situation where someone has quite an inventory of work that they've held on to. And I think they're all landscapes, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, there's 5 images that she provided. These are the 5. And I have dimensions of the pieces in the email. And she did reach back out to me. I let her know that I was going to, after the last meeting, share with the group. And I did share that at the time, there was concerns raised about how many artworks we already have in storage right now, and concerns where new pieces would go. And she seemed to understand wholeheartedly. So.
Well, I'll repeat what I said at the last meeting, and that was that I don't think that Mr. Dawson is of the caliber of works that we've discussed acquiring, as we've identified priorities for work. Such was the case with the Thompson acquisition for the convention center, that his name would never be on that type of a list. But I'm also concerned that we not acquire works of art that we have no space for. And between both of those reasons, I would not support accepting this donation. But I'll open it up for comments from others.
Makes me wonder if there's a couple things. If it's got a history with the police department, not that that's appropriate, but I know that an artist I was working with for Rotary Amphitheater, there was a request by Graham Ron for that artwork to go into the police station. It's culturally relevant for the area, but I don't know if his work would fit in a meeting room. I mean, the landscape work with I don't know if it's even fitting, but then I thought the other building across the street going up, UGM, if they wanted to make just a donation just for the art to be in a public setting or something. I just thought, it's like new buildings and things that are gonna potentially need artwork by local people from the community. I don't know. Those two thoughts came up. I don't know if it's relevant.
There's, I'm sure that over time we'll have other similar, requests, and because there's a lot of artists around and they pass away, and then there's all this work that's left. And, we certainly can't take it. So it's unfortunate that there's not some other entity that could use it.
Other comments?
I'm sure that Cheryl, his wife, has talked to SAA, but when I worked at SAA in the 90s and early 2000s, he was very involved there and taught there and was represented by the gallery. So it seems like their permanent collection would be an obvious place to donate work. But I agree that it's irresponsible of us to take much work now if we don't have a place to put it.
All right, I'm not hearing any indication of a willingness to accept this donation. Am I hearing that correctly? All right, well, Heather, I'll let you just let his wife know that we're appreciative of the offer, but we're not able to accept a donation at this time. Let's go on to the consideration of additional work from Betty Leduc. I think this one factor remains the same, and that is the city just doesn't have room for a lot more work. I do like this first one. These pieces are quite large, and it is a very generous offer. The works are 50 years old. Betty's a prominent artist. But what are people's thoughts?
I don't have a problem with the age of the works necessarily, other than what I said earlier, that this one's more characteristic of her style that she's known for. The other two aren't, but I still think they're great paintings. But I wouldn't want to accept them without knowing where we were going to put them. And if we were able to, once we know exactly what's going on with the library, perhaps one of these could be a good addition to the library space. I mean, this one I can see working well with some of the work that we already have in the library. But also, I mean, it would be nice to be able to see them in person because
Yeah.
photos and reality can be very different. Also, condition of the pieces. So those are my thoughts.
Well, maybe we could hold off on making a decision today on the Leduc pieces. It sounds like, it sounds like the library is in a condition right now where our subcommittee could go in and start looking at real spaces for the reinstall. And I don't know what the process is for that. Because obviously you probably want to have a plan before the actual work is ready to be installed. And then because the trees of life will not be picked up from Ashland until the middle of July, there still is time to kind of take the temperature of things, see whether there's room for any of these proposed donations, and then still get it on that truck. Does that sound okay to people? The only other place that I could think of that might make sense would be the city manager's outer office, you know, that reception area. But these are pretty large, so maybe it might not work there. The council chambers are pretty full at this time. I don't know whether there's any appetite for moving things around there.
I think a couple of those pieces are under consideration to possibly move into the new library.
Okay.
At least we had sort of surface talked about that. Also, Heather, what is the plan for the space that the police have or are going to or have vacated at City Hall? I know at some point you had talked about there being sort of a public reception, not reception, but whatever's being moved there is going to have like a lobby of some sort.
Yeah, I've only seen pretty rough drawings, but what they're looking at now is in lieu of reconfiguring that entire first floor, I think the portion that they're looking at would be the northeast corner where there used to be kind of a little vending area for staff. Reconfiguring just a piece of that corner, I don't even think it's that entire segment along the eastern side. That will be some kind of customer service center. And what I recall is really it's going to be kind of set up with desks, multiple desks, permits, utility billing, kind of all in a one-stop shop for all of those kinds of in-person needs, combined with several different kind of conference rooms where folks could meet with planning staff if they have questions about things like that. So not a big space. It looked like it was going to be fairly tight and maybe fairly busy. But there might be options.
Yeah, I mean, anything, if these pieces are 5 by 6 feet, it's, you know, they're going to need a pretty substantial wall to display them properly. Okay, are we okay to just hold off though on the Betty Leduc?
I think that Rachel said it best with just not knowing the condition or seeing them in person. It's really challenging. I don't know when the next opportunity would be to do that or how realistic it, not to say that that's what we use to necessarily put it off or put it on the back burner, but it's certainly a good comment I agree with.
Yeah,
I like they're here in Salem where we can go look at them and say, oh, wow, they're beautiful. We want them.
Yeah, agreed. Well, if anybody finds a reason to be in Ashland, please let people know. There are some, things are starting to open up, you know, The Schneider Museum is doing some good stuff. So I might go down there in June, but we'll see. All right. Is there other business that we need to consider?
I have just a couple updates, if we're ready, unless there's others.
We're ready.
Okay. Okay, so one, this is quick. I heard just yesterday, in fact, what is it? The Pastoral Mural downtown on Port Street. Jennifer Joyce, I think, is the artist from that one. So apparently that's been tagged. It's got a small set of pink letters. I've not been down to look at it myself, but apparently it's not huge. It's nothing belligerent or anything of that nature, but there is some lettering on it. And as I recall, I've not yet looked back through emails, but it seems like when we were looking at the Mattingly mural, that was then another one of those orphaned pieces that really was never accepted into the collection. So of course, I think folks are under the impression that it's the city's. So I'll likely do some outreach to the business owner after I do some more research myself. But if folks have thoughts on what we would need to do, this came up with the geese mural last summer, I think it was, and it was the business owner ended up having that one repaired. We'd had conversations about ownership prior to that, but if there's thoughts on what should be done, maybe to try to repair that, I don't know what that is, but I'll be reaching out to the owner. I don't think it's part of the collection.
Is it on the side of the sewing shop?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
It is.
Yes, it is. That's the location. The quilting place.
So just sharing that. Again, let me know if you have thoughts on how we might repair that or what recommendations I could provide at least. And then
They might want to talk to Carol Smith about she hired I think a sign company to touch up the geese vintage signage on the side of her building. And that, I mean, it looks pretty good. I don't remember the company, but I'm sure we could figure that out quickly. I don't think the city should take on the responsibility of adding these to the collection and then being responsible for maintaining things on private property.
yeah, unfortunately, and that falls back to me, it still says on the city's website that piece is part of the collection as well. That's been on my list to do, to update the collection, and it's never been tied to a deadline. So I've let that one slip, and then here we go, it comes up again. So that's on me. I do feel bad about not getting that corrected. So I'll work through that and try to get stuff updated finally, as soon as I can get to the office.
Did the building owner reach out to you, or did someone else report it?
No, apparently it was reported through, we have a graffiti hotline of sorts. And so the police actually reached out to me, and I let him know it might sit there for a little bit as we work through it.
Okay.
I have a question. If it's not part of the collection, then theoretically it shouldn't be allowed to be there, right?
I think you're absolutely right, or it would need to finally go through some kind of permit process. I don't think that's been pushed for some of these. That hasn't yet been pushed for geese. I don't know if we have staff to push for that right now, to be quite honest. But yeah, that's one repercussion of it not being in the collection.
But wouldn't some of this stuff, the geese, that was a sign on a building that's on the National Register. So wouldn't that be grandfathered in from, any kind of a sign code that didn't exist at the time it was created?
It might, I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, I think that Pastoral thing is a different example, because I thought I had heard at some point that Salem Art Association had a very long ago alley improvement thing going on. Did you live in Salem way back then, Paula? I think it was when Cynthia Adams was the director, but we could figure it out.
I remember that mural being there when I moved here in the, 89. So
Yeah.
I think it might have been right before that.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I can find out from Cynthia, but I'm seeing more tagging in general. So it's just a shame that this stuff happens. Well, I guess keep us posted on that, Heather.
Will do. Thank you.
What else have you got for us?
Yeah, I'll just share that there was new interest in a mural program. Speaking of murals, this last week from, as I mentioned earlier, a gentleman from Marion County Juvenile Department reached out and said that they are working on, let me expand my notes, a program that is focused on the arts and culture with youth engaged with the juvenile department, and we're potentially looking at citywide opportunities to create mural projects, but wanted, of course, to determine what might be required. And so I've shared with this man the present requirements. He shared a video, and I'd be happy to send that out to the group of what it is, one option that they're looking at. They're actually working with a gentleman, and I realized I just got a voicemail from him prior to the start of this meeting. His name's Carlos from the Morpheus Youth Project up in Portland. It's a pretty cool video showing youth painting, a culturally relevant mural that looks like it's painted on like a plywood that's then affixed to a wall up in the Portland area. But I'll share that with you. That is what they are currently looking into. And so I'll chat with Carlos, I guess, a bit more about our current requirements. I don't think, given the discussions that we've had in this group, I can't imagine that that's something that we would allow into the collection at this point. And I don't know that the sign, there's the size limitations and other with the sign code. So unfortunately, I don't know that there is an option for that right now. I guess I will just share, presently there would be potentially an option for the commission to accept things of that nature, and then have that easement that at a certain point in time it's painted over. That is an option. I know that there's maybe not interest in taking that route, but I just wanted to bring that up again today for the group.
Well, yeah, I think we should think about this. When I was at the Arts Commission, we had a special appropriation for some art projects at the various facilities of the Oregon Youth Authority. And some of the work that was produced was quite powerful. And some of the experiences were pretty transformational for those kids. And ultimately, we had some plywood panels that were created in one of the facilities that were installed in the underground tunnel that went from the Oregon State Capitol to a underground parking facility. So people saw them, but they were protected from the weather. But the work got a lot of exposure because of the foot traffic down there. And it may be that, we should figure out kind of what this guy has going already. Like, do they have an artist who is working in the facility? Are these kids, self-learning about painting? What are the messages? And figure out what positive route they could take that might not require permitting and accessioning into a public fine art collection, that has its own rules and code. Because this is the kind of stuff that you want to, these can be very powerful experiences for kids who might not have a lot of other opportunity. So, and, there might be funding or, a direction that we could point them in or toward. So I think we should just gather some more information, and I would love to see the video. But what about thoughts from others?
It seems to me we ought to do our best to figure out how to encourage this type of stuff, and if if it could be, I mean, a place to display. I hadn't thought about those tunnels under that go under the Capitol. You know, if we were back in a place where we were having events down at the waterfront, you know, even if
Yeah.
there was like a temporary installation that,
Right.
you know, for Earth Day or something, whatever,
Mhm.
or World Beat, you know, yeah, because you're right. I mean, first of all, it just would be great to not have to say no to everything like this that came down the pipe.
Right,
But I mean, it seems like we should be encouraging it. So,
right. Like
I agree. I agree. I feel like we are completely hamstrung by the code, and until we make progress on rewriting that so that there is a pathway for a mural program in Salem that does not include 7 years easement and a permanent addition to the public art collection, we're kind of, I feel like we're being set up as the bad guys, you know, to say no to all these wonderful projects. And it's because of how the code is currently written. And so I feel like we need to make it a priority to fix that problem.
Yes, I would agree. When we finish this call, I'm going to circulate an image that I saw this morning where artists in Queens, New York were actually using concrete construction barriers on a highway as the canvas for a work of art. And it was a repetitive pattern that was being painted and stenciled on. But, you know, that type of temporary thing could be a site for, you know, a vibrant multicultural effort, you know, by kids, you know, troubled youth. But I'll share it following the meeting. But I think it would be good to just have a conversation with the man who reached out to you and to learn more about what he's doing with these kids in the world of art.
And I'll just add too. So in terms of the code, I know that's something that's on my plate as well. That I've said it before. It's not going to be super easy to do that. There's hesitation among staff for making any changes in code. That doesn't mean I'm not going to continue to push and try to meet with folks and work on that, but it's not something that's going to happen quickly. And right now there is that minimum requirement of 7 years. But it also says in code that the commission can change that. It's up to the commission to make a different time period if they so choose. So there is an option right now where things could be temporarily accepted and painted over after a time that we define. I don't know if that's.
Well, if we have the leeway to do something like that, can we also create like a temporary collection of art, you know, that could include murals or these temporary installations or something like that. If we create another class of object in our collection, but and to make the process just easier for people, because right now it seems like it's designed in a way to discourage the process rather than encourage. And I know that the city is very concerned about legal issues, but I feel like there's a way to balance that so that we can encourage artistic expression and enhancement of our city. And it's frustrating because I feel like we keep hearing these stories like the one that you've shared this morning of groups and organizations and individuals who are interested in doing a mural, but they can't because of these really stringent requirements. And I was also approached recently. There's an interest in putting a mural on the side of a building that is facing, I think it's Ferry Street. It's a Willamette-owned building, but I think it's slated for demolition at some point. And so this wouldn't be a permanent mural, and in fact, I think their idea is to kind of change it periodically. And so it's one of these things that does not fit neatly into how we have defined the murals within the code. So I feel like we are being constantly put in this position of being the bad guys, where our job is to really encourage art in the city, where we have a very, not very much of it to begin with. And so I find it incredibly frustrating.
It might be interesting to actually bring a real example like the one you just suggested. I think I know the building that you're talking about. And bring that example to the city's legal folks to just talk about, like, this is low risk. This is not ever going to be owned by the city, and just see where we get with that. Because there are, like the Ace Hotel in Palm Springs does an annual mural to coincide with the Coachella Music Festival. And it is intended to be a transitory experience. So if you come in 2019, it looks like this. If you come in 2020, it's going to look like this or that. I also want to just go back to the incarcerated youth for a minute and suggest that we help them problem solve to kind of achieve what they want to do, and that is to create an opportunity for their kids to create culturally expressive works of art that would be available to the public, for the public to see. And there are examples in many jurisdictions of artists using billboards for citywide neighborhood kinds of displays. Some of the billboard companies will donate the space for free, depending on location and what they've got going on. And, the billboards, there are digital billboards, which are not my favorites, but they're cheaper to run. But then, kids could produce work on a certain scale, and then they could be output on vinyl and displayed on a billboard type of scale. So I do think, and then I'm assuming that there's not a sign code fee associated with that, or the billboard company would pay for it. And what else was I going to say? I just blanked out. And then there wouldn't be a mural, but it would be on the scale of a mural. So it would be accomplishing what they want to do. And I think it could be pretty cool around town. But anyway.
Also, right now, another idea for them is that, the Salem Art Association does not currently have a curator in place. And so and they are planning to reopen, is my understanding. But they don't really have an exhibit program lined up. So I think they're looking for some ideas, and this might be an opportunity to maybe collaborate and have whatever their finished product is or process on view there and in their nice gallery. So
right.
I would
or even if they happen to do their work on 4x8 panels of plywood in a weather resistant paint, it could be displayed around the building outside, so people who are out walking, strolling, biking,
Yeah.
could see them. Yeah, I mean, yeah, they're,
I have, so this is kind of a backdoor thing that maybe is not right, but so what I wonder, you know, because I've done a lot of things similar to this. So if someone put together, you know, a 4 plywood panel mural frame that they put up in their yard, the city would come by and say, uh-oh, this is not right. You have 30 days to take it down. Is there like a time frame that there might be that to take it down? Where
I don't think we want to encourage the incarcerated youth to break the law.
Well, as long as they're within the, like, okay, it comes down in 30 days. You know, if it's, and even what if we have the city involved and say, okay, it might be a way to bend the rules. Okay, you get the notice, has to come down in 30 days, otherwise you get a fine.
And then it moves to another determined
exactly. It moves 3 houses down. You know, I'm just trying to think, all right, how can we, you know, work within the frame that we have. You know, I know it's off the wall, but
I like what you're saying. It makes someone in your neighborhood, Chris, made me thought, so construction site fencing, we've all seen it in cities all over the planet, where temporary works go up around construction site fencing. I often wondered if there's, to your point about plywood panels, they create them off site and they bring them in and they beautify a construction site. So had we had this in place for a temporary arts, it's not on a wall, it could be there for a predetermined, permitted by the city, set amount of time, would create opportunities. So we would have had one at the police station, we would have one at UGM, we would have had wherever the next, amphitheater in the park, we would have had fencing all around that for a year. And then your ideas around SAA would be the same thing. If there's no art fairs, so they have grant money for TOT, whatever they need to, they can put up fencing and then they can do a whole exterior thing where people will take a walk in the park, see the mural campaign. I mean, I think if there's a new way to slice and dice it so that it's considered temporary, not on a wall and a permanent structure, could fall under construction site / temporary event site. I mean, Bush Parks is city park, so I mean, would think it would just fall in line with some sort of permit process that says it can be up for 45 days and no more.
Exactly.
And then I think, you know, all we got to do is do it twice, and then everyone will start to see it driving by every day or visiting a park or something. And then it might just be something that people start, I wouldn't say demanding, but embracing. Where can we do this? Or where's the next construction site going to be? And then rally different groups of people to create opportunity. Because as soon as you say, hey, we have a space that's not a wall, people could go paint it in their garages or at their schoolyards and then bring it to wherever they need to install it very cheaply. So,
you know, I love the construction fence idea. And, you know, this might be a conversation for a Howard S. Wright or a, you know, Corey Redding, the construction guys.
Yeah.
Because when I'm always driving by the Y site and I see
there's another one,
the big logo with CB2 Architects, the big, you know, and it's very bold, obviously, because you designed it, Michael, and eye-catching, and, you know, substitute a work of art there.
But they only want so many of those branding. They don't want to over brand it. I mean, they're basically promoting the, you know, whatever business promotion, but it's like you have the majority of the fencing is uncovered. It's just some sort of, I wouldn't say eyesore, but they're put up to kind of, you know, keep the site safe and keep people out. But I mean, I guess the idea would be is if people can fund their own art, plywood panels, there's no expense to the, say, construction company. It's just a sign off of like, sure, how many are you going to bring? Well, this is where they're going to be placed. And, you know, because those vinyl banners cost a ton of money. They're, thousands of dollars just for those stinking printed banners.
There is some engineering aspects to putting plywood on fencing like that. There is the wind shear thing to watch out for, but I think that's all a great idea. And there must be something that we could work within the code that would allow that. I mean, when they have a building, do you have to get a permit to put up their logo on the side of their fence at a construction site?
I don't know what the requirements are.
Yeah, I mean, one other, not to beat a dead horse, but one other idea for the Marion County folks is that the J.C. Penney building downtown is vacant. And I know that the building owners were interested, or the people who were trying to sell it were interested in activating the windows there. So obviously something could happen in those display windows.
Mm-hmm.
On
Is that SBN, or they're the ones promoting the property for lease, or the new tenant, SBN?
Yeah, I don't know. But I just, I know that they're interested in not having it be a dead space. So.
Remember your idea originally was followed the same suit, Chris, when the Nordstrom moved out, and they've been boarded up due to the homeless crisis and some civil unrest potential, that they've boarded things up, and it's just been plywood. I mean, it's just plywood. I mean, they're already creating the canvas. I think the JCPenney people could probably do the same thing with, not boarding up their windows, but beautifying spaces that potentially stay empty. I mean, how long has the Nordstrom space now been? It's been 3 years.
There's a sign now too. I noticed that they're leasing that, or they're trying to, it looks like, or is it for sale again? Does anyone know what's happening there?
I think the idea is it needs to be divided up because it's such a big space for someone to take a single lease.
Well, I'll have to drive by. I haven't been down there. Okay. Is there other business to come before this group today?
I don't have any.
Well, I think we might be ready to adjourn at 11:16. Okay, well, I look forward to hearing more about the library and getting an update from Eileen and team, and got a lot to follow up on. Oh, we didn't talk about the Echo Earth Ball, but we'll do that next month. Okay, I think we're adjourned.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Enjoy spring.
Thank you.